Hello and welcome back to another Demis Hellen tutorial. We're back in Vital and we're going to make a pluck preset, and then this is going to be available for free on the website, so you can go and grab a copy from the Vital section on the website. And I'm going to show you some of my favourite things that I like to use and some of the workflow that I like to use for making these presets. So plucks in particular are really nice sounding on Vital. It's something that I enjoy doing, and I'm sure you will too, especially now that it's out and everybody can get a copy. And just a quick disclaimer, I am not being paid in any way, shape or form. This is just Vital and me loving using it. Anything new to just have a mess around with on an evening and just test out how it sounds, Vital just seems to be the thing that I keep coming back to. And for this demo, I've imported some MIDI from my new Trance Pluck pack. You can see that on screen now if you'd like to support the channel. Okay, straight away you can see all I've done is just dropped the envelope here just to simulate a bit of a pluck straight off the mark, but that is the basic sound that we start with. Right, let's make this a little bit longer, so I'm just going to increase the release there to about 1 second to start with. So there's a little bit of overlap. And we're going to use the unison, and we're going to use one of these in here, probably smear, because there's a little trick that I like to use to increase the attack of the pluck using the smear. And then we'll go through to the filters. And what I'm going to do is just build this preset so you can hear it and just see how I work through this. And let's have a quick look at what we've just done there. So we've dropped this by 12, so that is 1 octave. And the reason that has been done is in the Advanced tab, I've used the octave stack here. So we can choose ×2 octave or just 1 octave instead of just the standard unison. And it just gives a little bit more depth to the sound, and it stops you utilizing 2 of the generators instead of 1. And if we take a look in the Advanced again, you can see that the stereo unison has been dropped, so I don't want it as wide. I'm just kind of reining that in a little bit. And then table spread and select have been adjusted just to how it sounds good in the headphones. back in here. We'll skip back to the filter in a second. We're now onto the unison. I've put 3 voices on and then I've turned this down to around 6%. It could go a bit lower. It's just to increase a little bit of stereo detail, so it's not just straight down the middle, and it just gives it a little bit of width, and that ties in nicely with how we've set this custom unison up here. Phase has been adjusted to 51%, so that just stops it kind of zooming around left and right as much once the unison's been applied. And if we turn it all the way down, it would be straight down the middle of your headphones again, practically mono. So just to keep everything under control and just keep it reined in, technically use a scope, check out how it sounds in the mid and sides, make sure everything is all sounding good. And then back to the oscillator, you can see filter 1 has been selected, and I turned filter 1 and just chose the ladder 12 dB per octave. And you can see I set this down to a relatively low level so we couldn't hear it, and then applied envelope number 2 that I shaped here onto the filter cutoff. And that simply gives it the classic plucked feeling using the filters. Then the velocity was applied and dragged the opposite way. So you can see here it is actually -25, so it's going backwards. And what that's doing is just adding a bit of depth into the pluck. And it gives you a bit of control over velocity as well, but it just adds some depth and gives it a nice vibe. And finally, we did miss out smear, so let's just have a quick look what that does. So you can see what that's doing is actually thinning the sound out to the point that it is non-existent. It squashes it to the point that, boom, there is nothing. And using the smear will give us a nice opportunity to increase the pluck. So you could hear when I turn this on and off, that the smear was actually adding a lot more transient detail into the sound, thus giving it more of an attack on the pluck. And then we can control that with the time. The slower the time, the slower that it's going to adjust the smear, the quicker it's going to adjust it. And that is just using the standard initialized waveform, nothing too fancy. You can see there the 3D version, it's just the same thing. There's nothing at all to choose from that's different at all. You can see there all the frames are identical. And there we have it. That's kind of the first stage that I always get to when designing something with a saw wave in mind anyway. And then we can change it up a little bit, so we can draw our own in. We can edit the shape of this one using the custom editor here, and we'll look at that in later videos. But we're going to add a second layer in, and we're going to just choose something different from the factory presets. So let's choose quad saw to start with. And then if we cycle through these, we have a few options here. So let's just have a listen to this on its own. Got an interesting sound, and I want to add a little bit of a extra layer on top to give that transient a little bit of a hit. So I'm going to turn the phase down to 0 to achieve that straight off the bat. We're going to leave the unison at 1 voice. We don't want anything spreading through here, and we're still going to send it to filter 1 so we get everything going through the same part. Just adds a little bit of volume to the sound. Now we can take this to another level, and it's really easy to just start amending this sound by adding another filter in and using some of the effects. So let's have a look at the filter number 2, and we're going to set these to actually go to filter 1 and 2. So now we have both filters operating, and this one can control this one. Depending on how you set this up, we can actually say filter 2 is going to control this, or filter 1 is going to control this. So we can see it's independent, it's still controlling the sound, but it's not actually controlling this filter here, it's just leaving that one to do its thing, whilst this one layers on top. So it's like a mix knob, we can actually filter the unfiltered signal into the second filter to control it. And that's because oscillators 1 and 2 are selected in both sides. So what do we do if we hit filter 2 here? Not much is going to happen because the control is already taking place here. It's quite low down, it's already set, so we're not going to hear much here. So let's set filter 2 to actually control filter 1. Now we have full control over the plucked filter, and we don't have to adjust any settings on there to change how it sounds. So we can get some really interesting results, have a play around with some of the others, like we can put a comb spread flange on here. And going to choose the ladder 12 on here, and we're going to leave filter 1 actually to be controlled by filter 2. It adds a layer of depth in there, and we don't have to adjust these settings, which makes the workflow even quicker. We can also use the key tracking just to control a few other options. We can actually let some more of them higher peaks come through, or we can bias the lower peaks. Or should we say the lower sounds, the higher sounds. So we're going to bias just a little bit on the key tracking there, just to make it sound a little bit more natural rather than just a rigid cut. Okay, let's have a look at a few little extras here. LFO2, let's set this to sine, and I'm going to set again this to seconds. And we're going to attach this to the pitch. Now this is unidirectional at this moment, so it'll sound like this. And we need to set that to sync. So it's unidirectional and it's just going one direction. So we're going to click on the modulation here, right click and hit make bipolar. We can also jump into the matrix and we can change it here by clicking here. Now let's have a look at this. Now you can see it's going back and forth on there. Let's control that a bit. I'm going to make that a little bit faster. Now this is all dependent on the pluck that you're trying to make. We're trying to make something that sounds a little bit analog, has a little bit of an 80s vibe to it, but still keeps in with the trance sort of sound. Okay, let's attach the mod wheel to this. So it's going to sit about here. Let's get a bit higher. About there will do. And you can see that I've adjusted that so it'll open that filter to the top. And I might even just go to there. So I'm just going to bring that back a little bit. That sounds okay. So now we can adjust these envelopes if we want to, just to add a little bit more pluckiness back in. So let's bring up the envelope number 2. And we can even go as far as adding envelope 2 to here as well. And just gently tickle filter 2 just to give it a little bit of variety in there, just to change it up and just let that pluck come through a little bit more when the filters are closed. At this point I'm just going to save this, so let's just save this as a lead and I'm just going to call it pluck demo for now. We'll give it a proper name and I'll let you know in the comments so you can go and download that obviously. Hit save. So we've got that there and we'll get a little asterisk at the top just to say that we're editing the preset from this point as soon as we make a click. Now we're going to jump into the effects and we're going to turn on reverb. We're going to start with reverb just because I like setting the scene, and obviously you can control this for later on. It's part of the sound design for this stage anyway. So I'm going to turn the mix up to about 50% for now, the time to about 4 seconds and the size to about 60-70%. I'm going to turn down the chorusing here and the amount. So a little trick that I like to do here, the same with LFO1, but I want to control it at a different pace, is change this, drag this down and make this an envelope. So then we don't have to mess around with all these controls. We can just quickly make a sharp envelope. It's better than having to turn so many dials just to get this setting. I'm going to set this to seconds again. And we're going to attach it to the mix and we're going to go the opposite way. So it's actually turning it off. So when the pluck hits, there is no reverb at all. And then it comes back in and it can be controlled by this LFO time then. So you can here there's no reverb present at all because this envelope is not reaching the bottom where you'd actually hear the reverb come back in. And as we adjust this, so that sounds about right. If we bypass this, you're going to hear what it sounds like before. So we get some of that transient detail coming through clean and uncut. And that gives us some of the pluck coming through before it is treated with some reverb. And we can do this the same way for all different effects. We can actually do it so it's raw before any of the wet effects come through. So the wet effects I would call the reverb, the delay, things like chorusing, all that sort of stuff. You can actually bypass it for the transient, so then only the effect is applied to the rest of the sound once that transient is out of the way. Keeps it sharp and keeps it poking through the mix. Let's add a little bit of delay. Let's just wrap this up quickly. I'm going to set this to stereo and we'll set one side to tempo dotted on 8s. So you can hear that a lot of the transient detail gets lost immediately. So we're just going to apply this the same way. Not going to apply too much. Still want that to come through but not totally disappear. And finally, something that I like to use in preset design, don't use it on every single preset, that is using the distortion and using the downsample or bit crush, just to add a little bit of flavour into the sound. Take it away from sounding really clinical and just give it that little bit of pizzazz, because it seems to add like a bit of a sparkle on the top the way the samples are being crushed. About there, it just gives it a little bit of sparkle and it adds to the feel and the vibe of the sound. If we turn this off, it helps to pull it away from the center a little bit more, so it adds a little bit more stereo depth and feel to it, but at the same time it's adding a little bit of crunch and texture to your sound. By all means, control this with the various controls. We can add some pre-filtering and post-filtering as well if we want to. For example, we can switch this around and say we don't want it to apply to certain frequencies, so we can just roll off the lows so it's not affecting the lows. We're going to use the mod wheel here just to demonstrate that we can adjust some parameters to make it sound a little bit more interesting. So it's just moving that drive a little bit and you just hear a little bit of detail shifting around, and we can do that for a lot of things there. And there we have it. That is probably the quickest workflow that you can do to get to some pluck sounds and just get a feel for Vital and how it operates. And there we have it. That is the end of the video. That is a pluck preset. Let's rename this pluck now so we can actually use this on the online free downloads. Don't forget you can head to demishellen.com/free presets. There are other synths on there as well to get your presets. We'll call it Pluck Vital 1. So thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and also hit the bell icon so you get updates on when that video goes live, so you're in the chance to see it first and learn some new techniques for your trance tracks. And finally, hit the like button and drop me a comment if you'd like to ask me anything down there about this video. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.